completing the assignments, but the ones that are making sure that they are, getting those 2 pages, utilizing structure, grammar, punctuation, those 2 page length, getting close to it. That's all very, very big in the sense of doing well on those quick writes. Okay, so kudos to those that are doing well. But again, there's always time in the semester. I'm going to be offering extra credit next week. Okay, so next week I will be going over that, what that entails, so that again, if anybody is falling behind, they can utilize that extra credit for that purpose. Okay, so again, making sure that making sure you're completing your assignments. Okay, so if you are a little bit behind, again, there is always time. Okay, at least for this semester. Like I said, understanding the circumstances of situation that's unprecedented. So again, just making sure you're getting it complete. All right. Any questions, comments, or concerns or issues before I start up with the congressional chapter? And again, I love when everyone's saying hi to everyone else in the sense of that rapport you guys already have, it seems like, which is great because again, that's a part of what school is as well. Education in the group setting, being able to work with other people, different personalities. I'm not big on group assignments because sometimes I feel like one group member will do more than another, but in the sense of again where that's where I believe that again it seems like group assignments to me are kind of not testing the caliber of students individually. So that's where the ideas of quick writes come into play. So again, when it comes to different standards, complete those assignments and you will definitely not only be passing this class, but again, doing well in the course overall. All right. Any questions, comments, or concerns before I start up with Chapter 9? No? All right. Sounds good. And again, you can always use the chat box function or simply unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, get some clarity, all those things that, again, may be necessary in the congressional chapter. I've thrown several memes in here from different movies, different things of that nature. So again, lightening up the congressional chapter itself. So in the sense of again, so Chloe asks, is anyone else struggling to get 2 pages for the quick write that is due tonight? So if you are struggling to get information, okay, again, it's not just the textbook. If you want to use outside sources that can help you, maybe in the sense of, again, what you specifically may key on. Because, again, it's not just answering the questions. It's how you oftentimes are able to extend what that question is beyond just maybe, 2 paragraphs or 1 paragraph. But you are able to, again, utilize, a way in which to extend your sources of information, okay? Whether, again, you're using the textbook, my PowerPoints, or simply using your opinion, ways in which to kind of, say things in different ways without having to, again, worry so much about the idea behind repeating yourself. Because in a lot of academic papers, you'll find that academics will say the same thing over and over, just in different terms, in different contexts, in different research studies. So again, it's not so much about the idea of feeling like you're going to repeat yourself, because again, it may be in a different context, if that makes any sense. Right. So you guys are struggling. If we aren't on a certain side, can we have pros and cons of both? Yeah, of course. That's a great question, Isabella, because again, that's where a lot of students are doing better because they are pro and conning both sides. And again, oftentimes that's the way it is. It's pragmatism. The idea that there is a different solution for different circumstances, whether again, one is preferential to, a certain, conservative or progressive, but again, more for the idea behind the betterment of the taxpayer, the betterment of the tax-paying citizen. Okay, so when you're talking about the way judges go about conducting business, okay, so judges in this last quick right that I gave you, they have a tendency to rely on precedent, like we talked about. Okay, so when you're relying on precedent, okay, as a judge, okay, you are playing that cog in the machine that is the judicial system. Okay, so you are, basically at, let's say, the superior court level, the appeals court level, or the Supreme Court, federal court benches. All of these different things and entities that again speak to how a judge rules. Okay, so when you're contemplating those, whether a judge should be elected or appointed, okay, so again, weighing those pros and cons is a great way to go about it because again, you're able to be a fence rider. You're able to see the circumstance for what it is rather than being biased in one way before you write a quick write. Because again, pragmatism oftentimes, like I said, involves a solution for a different circumstance based on, again, what the circumstance or context may be. So yeah, I mean, in the sense of, again, doing those different things, that is a good idea for future quick writes. If you haven't found that idea useful yet, utilize it. Okay, because again, there are no right or wrong answers to these quick writes. It's how you are able to discuss the topic and the merits behind both sides. Okay, the idea that there are circumstances that fit where, again, you are discussing your opinion into the matter, your political socialization into the matter. Because again, we were all raised differently. All those ideas, opinions that are formed, again, they're coming from somewhere. Again, they're coming from us, but again, the nature of who we find as important, are individuals that definitely influence us. Okay, our pastors, preachers, imams. If we're not religious, obviously that's not going to pertain. But then you have news commentators. You have not just your parents, but your cousins, your aunts, your uncles. All of them play a role in creating who you are, regardless of if we think they do or not. Again, there's a lot of moving parts that go along with how we go about making our opinions about things form. Okay, so again, that's going along the same lines with, again, on these quick writes. Again, it's discussing both sides is the best way to go about it. Okay, because again, that allows you to put your fingers to the keyboard and see where, again, you are able to make connections between how we feel about things, the reality of things, and then maybe our opinion about things. So how they roll in context. Okay, so again, it's those that are writing, in the sense of what I'm portraying and what I'm saying, are the ones that are doing well. and the ones that are utilizing outside sources as well to oftentimes further their discussion and lens and perspective into the matter. Okay. But yeah, no, good point, Matt, in the sense of, again, also shows you understand the topic well. Yeah. Oh, 100%. And again, that's where my advice to you is not only to do that, but again, it allows it to be longer in the long run, because again, you're able to discuss both sides and then maybe mention your personal opinion at the end, where your pendulum lies in that discussion. Because again, like you said, Matt, it tells me that you have, done your due diligence in thinking about what that circumstance or context is. Okay. But good statement. Good statement, Matt, in the sense of, again, it proves to me that, again, you have done your due diligence. You've discussed the questions in your own mind to make sense. And then, again, putting that keyboard fingers to work. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
This is the interpreter, or one of the interpreters. Your screen is still loading. Is that just me, or
is that the case for everyone?
You can see the first slide of your presentation.
Okay, let me reload it. So I'm going to reload it right now, just for those that may not be able to see it. Just because, again,
yeah, it's not just me, I don't think. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So no worries. I'm glad you told me. Let me see. This is right there. See. Let me see here. All right. So I will be sharing it, and it should be on the screen right about now. Can everyone see it?
It says loading.
Yeah, same here.
For me.
You're lagging so hard.
It's still loading.
You can see it now.
Okay.
There it is. Good now.
Okay.
I'm sorry. As the interpreter, I have to have that while you're talking. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem at all. I can only judge things from the instructor perspective. So I'm glad you told me, because I would have never been able to know that.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. All right. So it appears that it is now loaded. So again, if it is lagging, I did just mute everyone. So usually that helps out in the sense of the usage of different audios that may lag and slow down the system. So hopefully that helps out as well. Okay. All right. The congressional chapter. Oh, Congress. So Congress's approval rating hovers around somewhere between, collectively, we're talking collective Congress, somewhere around 15 to 20% on a good year. Okay. On a good year. Okay. However, when it comes to our individual congressman or woman, okay, that approval rating is a lot higher. Okay, so that's kind of the disconnect where Congress as a whole is seen in a very negative light. Okay, but individual congressmen and women are seen, with an approval rating around 55, sometimes 60%, because they're winning their elections. So again, that disconnect between seeing Congress as a whole bad, but individual congressmen and women good. So what is Congress? Congress was utilized and created to work not just for local constituents, but for the broader interest of the nation as a whole. Okay, so again, Congress brings issues to light from different regions. Okay, so our elected officials are there to discuss and make a priority to our here in the Valley are reasons for specifically having topics that are meaningful to us. Okay, air, water, and immigration. Okay, those three are usually the top three every year when it comes to the topics of our interest here in the Valley. And it makes sense. Okay, every one of those has to do with agriculture, farming. So again, all that nature of who and what we do, we're going to be discussing that from our regional perspective. Okay, our regional perspective with our three local congressmen. Okay, so depending on where you live, your representative, your House representative would either be Devin Nunes, David Valadao, or Jim Costa. Okay, so depending on where you live here in the Valley, that's who your representative would be. Okay, so oftentimes, again, any individual that is elected to our area, they better have those three topics that I said, air, water, and immigration, as their number one focus. Okay, all of them together, not just one over the other, because again, they are all definitely moving parts within the agriculture industry. Okay, so again, knowing that our local congressmen are making sure that those interests are spoken for. So what does a congressman do during these conflicts? Because sometimes there's going to be an overlap between what's best for constituents locally and what's best for the nation, right? But sometimes they're not going to connect. They're not going to overlap. They are going to have a disconnect. And what does a congressman or woman do during these conflicts? This oftentimes builds their reputation. Okay, what type of congressman or woman are they prone to be? Okay, local constituency based lens or a national holistic lens. Okay, so we'll be talking about that. Okay? So, a constituent, we are a constituent to our representatives. So we're one of the persons represented by a legislator or other elected or appointed official. Okay? So we are considered a constituent by way of our representatives. So again, bicameralism, the idea behind how Congress is specifically denoted, you have, again, two chambers of Congress, House of Representatives, and the Senate. Okay, so again, you're talking about the two chambers that, again, make up that bicameral legislative structure. Okay? Lawmaking. So this is what we expect of our Congress. Okay, this is what we expect. We expect lawmaking. Okay, so specifically, what is lawmaking? Okay, so it's the process of establishing the legal rules that govern society. Okay, so again, where is that line in the sand going to be drawn by way of law? Okay, so how, again, the legislative branch, okay, in Congress, by way of focus of how citizens, what they want, what they don't want, is then written into law. Okay, so again, that's kind of where you're going to go with how you understand those things. Okay, so what we expect of them, again, is not always what we get. Okay, and that's what angers and frustrates us about Congress. Okay, there's a lot of times where they aren't thinking about the nation or their constituents. They're thinking about themselves. Okay, and that's that disconnect that goes beyond parties. Okay, it's not just Democrats, it's not just Republicans, it's not just independents. You have people that, again, oftentimes what's good for the dollar is good for for everything. So that can be a dilemma for how Democrats and Republicans are oftentimes at a disconnect with how to what's best for the tax-paying citizen. They think that that's best for them, and that's oftentimes what leads them astray. Because I have a firm belief that politicians come in with a good amount of good intentions. Okay, however, when they try to change the system, okay, by way of lawmaking, it's not them that changes the system. Oftentimes, it's that very system that changes them. Okay? So I've seen it numerous times. Parties doesn't matter, blue or red. It just doesn't matter. So again, we have to see the true culprit behind, what and why Congress is seen in such a negative light. Okay, earmarks is one of them. Okay, earmarks is one of those things, also called pork. Okay, so also referred to as pork. It's special provisions in legislation to set aside funds for projects that have not passed an impartial evaluation by agencies of the executive branch. Okay, so this is basically funds for pet projects. Okay, so earmarks, let's say our congressmen in our area were able to get an earmark for, let's say, for the building of a dam. Okay, so that'll help out in one of our issues of water here. Okay, that's been a project in the works now for decades. Okay, but has it come to fruition? No. But if there was an earmark that were to start something like that, see it that it passes environmental protections to get Democrats on board with different things, we would see that as a win. Okay, earmarks, when it's designated for our area, we'd say, hey, at least our congressman is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Okay. However, there's a disconnect as well. Earmarks from the other direction. Let's say it involves building a pet shelter in Texas. Okay. We're not going to think it's, we love pets, but we're probably not going to see what, the benefit is because it's in another area of the country. So again, there's that dilemma between what we as citizens expect from our congressmen, and then sometimes, that idea that earmarks are bad, but if that earmark funding were to go to us, we wouldn't think it would be that bad. Okay, so again, there's that disconnect, and I have a comic in the next strip that kind of speaks to that. Okay, representation, that's what we expect of our members of Congress. Okay, the function of members to represent the views of constituents as well as larger national interests. So again, local and national, they have to have that perspective in mind. Okay, so again, when a legislator has the perspective of the broad interest of society, they're oftentimes referred to as a trustee. Okay? So when you're looking at the broader, holistic national interests, the term trustee would fit. Okay, it's a legislature who acts according to his or her conscience and the broad interests of the entire society. Okay, so that broader interest, having that larger scope of what's important holistically, rather than an instructed delegate. Okay, so an instructed delegate, this is an agent of the voters. Okay, so this is an individual who is going to do exactly what their constituents want. Okay, regardless of how they may feel about the subject, they're going to vote according to what their constituents want. So, again, that would be an instructed delegate, a legislator who is an agent of voters who elected him, and it votes according to their views, okay, regardless of their own personal beliefs. So, again, how a congressman or woman oftentimes has to make those decisions in different contexts, throughout their career. Okay? If it's a long career, short career, depending on, oftentimes what decisions they make, what their constituents find is important. Are they actually being looked at? So all those things become important. Rider is another idea, just like earmark, in the sense that it gives legislative process a bad name. Okay, so what is a rider? It's a provision added onto a bill not directly relating to the content of the bill. Okay. This can be done to pass legislation which wouldn't pass on its own, or to poison a bill which otherwise would pass on its own. Okay, so again, riders are bad for the sense that they don't have to do anything with the actual text of the legislation involved. Okay, oftentimes it's incentivized, but again, it can be used to poison a bill as well. Okay, other people may see it so off-putting as members of Congress that they won't vote for it. Okay, so riders, again, one of those legislative process like earmarks that kind of gives the process a bad name. So what is pork? What is an earmark? Okay, so again, speaking at it through more of an idea behind what they are. So riders or earmarks, there's subtle differences, again, in the sense of utilized to poison a bill or incentivize a bill. They can be added provisions to bills, money or ideas. Okay, so again, those can be provisions in the sense of what they are as pork. Often funding for pet projects. Okay, so like I said, if those congressmen that we are represented by were to get funding for a dam, we would see that as a victory. Okay. It can be created to increase support by legislators, but it can also kill a bill. Okay. So we have a divided opinion about pork. So right there, when you have in that bottom right-hand corner there, my congressman and your congressman. Okay, so as I alluded to earlier, when it's my congressman, if it's, let's say, Jim Costa, Devin Nunes, David Valadeo, one of them, if they were to bring that 20 million or 30 million or 50 million for the building of that dam in the Central Valley, we would see that as bringing home the bacon. Okay, they're doing what we want. If it was your congressman, okay, so like I said, if it's some congressman from podunk nowhere that we will never see the financial benefits from having anything constructed, that's when we see it as evil. Okay, we have that pork, oh, it's bad, and then that's trimming the fat. We got to get rid of that stuff. So that's that divided opinion about pork. All right, so this is that dichotomy between a trustee and instructed delegate. So remember, a trustee is thinking more holistically. They're thinking about the broader interests of the nation, whereas an instructed delegate, again, is being, regardless of their own beliefs, they're going to vote according to what their constituents want. So again, that is that dichotomy between how a congressman or woman has to act, okay, or how they become to have a legacy. They have an agenda to run on, okay, as to why they ran in the first place. Okay, so again, all of these things collide in the political realm, especially in Congress, okay, because again, they have to make stances, and when they vote, it means something. So that's that record that they build that then, opponents or, people that are allies can then, point to and say, hey, they're a friend, or hey, they're an enemy. Okay. So again, all of those things mean something. when they're voted on. Okay. All right. So the nature and functions of Congress. So Office Space, one of my probably top 10 favorite movies. There was a time there where I would just keep it in my DVD player and watch it over and over and over and over again. So one of those things, Congress, what exactly would you say you do here? Okay. So it's a great movie. I definitely suggest you watch it. But when it comes to Congress, personal work for constituents, casework. Okay, so casework, what do we as tax-paying citizens want? Okay, what do we need? Okay, a lot of that has to do, again, with COVID-19, how people were affected, people's jobs are not coming back, the new economy, okay, the idea that there is going to be a new economy out there. With a hollowed out, local business, mom and pop shop, entity of business. And it's sad because, again, you see it and you see, the formation of, like I've said, a different economy. So casework, again, what we expect of our congressmen or women, personal work for us, as that tax-paying citizen. Right. Ombudsperson. So if you possibly feel your congressman or woman is doing something illegal, okay, you can make a complaint with an ombudsperson. Okay, ombudsperson. This is going to hear the complaint by the citizen. Investigate these claims, complaints by private individuals against these public officials or agencies. Okay, so again, where different levels of corruption may be, different areas of where congressmen or women may be using their position for their own personal gain, that happens more often than we know. Okay. So when it comes to right before, literally a year ago, so 4 congressmen got in hot water for insider trading, okay, based on dumping stock. Okay, so Dianne Feinstein, as well as I believe 2 Republicans and another Democrat, that basically were briefed about what was going to happen during COVID-19. And they immediately hit their portfolio and saved themselves from losing a lot of money. Right? So again, that's not just Democrats. It's not just Republicans. Also, getting in hot water. As Joe Biden made the announcement that green energy was going to be a part of the fleet for vehicles of the federal government, Nancy Pelosi made a pretty penny off of knowing what that was going to be. So, or making that decision, basically knowing that if he made that decision, her portfolio in the sense of how much she would make would go up. Okay? So as angering as it is, just know, I would beg to say 99% of Congress are millionaires. Okay. They have a complete disconnect between who we are as average people, and them, fighting for our interests. Okay. So again, there's that disconnect. And I'll harp on it at times, but again, they need a reality check sometimes. I think in the sense of congressmen or women just having big egos sometimes. They just feel that they have been voted in so many times that they're untouchable because of gerrymandering, which I'm going to go over. So I'll hint to that right now. So oversight, this is what we expect of Congress. Okay, so we don't just expect them to pass laws. We want Congress to follow up, okay, enact to make sure that it's being enforced and administered the way it was intended, the way Congress intended it being passed. oversight ensures that ability to do so. Okay, so that's oversight. Agenda setting. So depending on who is in charge, which since the Republicans lost the 2 Senate seats in early January, you then have a situation where Democrats control the Congress and the presidency, which is the legislative and executive branch, where Republicans, conservatives, control the judicial branch. Okay, so again, that's where the kind of breakdown is. Again, as judges, you're not supposed to be president. Basically, you're not supposed to have any bias towards a party, but you do. Okay, in the sense of, again, you have prior rulings that are indicative of the way you feel about certain issues, the context of certain issues. So again, that's kind of the breakdown. Okay? So that means Democrats get to set the agenda based on, again, the tiebreaker. Okay, the tiebreaker that the vice president ensures because of the 50-50 tie. That's 50 senators in the House. In the Senate, in the chamber, that again both 50 and 50. So that 50-50 tie, the vice president can come in and break that tie. So that's the breakdown right now. Okay, so enumerated power. So you guys remember that everyone does from the federalism writing assignment. Okay, at least should. Okay, at least should. So enumerated powers, again, are those Article 1, Section 8, okay, enumerated or expressed powers specified in the first 17 clauses. Okay? Filibuster. Okay, so filibuster. So there's been talk about getting rid of the filibuster. Okay, whether it's going to happen or not is one of those things. So what is a filibuster? Okay, so it allows a senator to unlimited talk. Okay, so in order to delay the voting on of a bill, a filibuster allows a senator to unlimited debate, unlimited talk to do so. Okay, so famously, I want to say about 5 years ago now. Oh, no, it was about 5 years ago now. So Ted Cruz took on a 23-hour filibuster, okay, which eventually led to the shutdown of the government. But when it came to what he was talking about, he went, in topics that had nothing to do with what was being voted on. He talked about green eggs and ham. He talked about Star Wars. So again, you have the ability to delay the voting on of a bill, but is it healthy? And so again, all these natures of why, people would go back and forth. Is it necessary? Is it not? So again, there's people on both sides of the fence. So I have a little meme there. Congress, the real zombie apocalypse. So I just, in the sense of, again, they're not spring chickens. Let's just say they're not spring chickens. They're a little bit older. Okay. And, I've always, not to, poke fun at the older individuals, but again, you start to, you're not at full firing when you're above 60 years old. Yeah, you're just not. You may feel like it, but I just feel like, again, not saying that, again, I know that, again, when you start getting older, I know that I will admit it. I will know that, again, I will not be younger again. I know I'll never be in my 20s, and I'll come to that conclusion. But it feels to me that congressmen and women, they want to hang on to power for as long as they can, and not for the betterment of the people, but for their legacy, which is very, to me, selfish. Okay. Because again, I just feel that, again, it should be more, towards us as tax-paying citizens, rather than building their legacy. Oftentimes building their stretch with oftentimes influence. Oftentimes, ex-congressmen and women will then become lobbyists. Okay, and I'm going to tell you what a lobbyist is in a future chapter, but that is oftentimes called the revolving door. Okay, so the revolving door of politics is where congressmen or women will retire from politics to then work on behalf of a pharmaceutical company, an oil company, a plastics company, all these different things that, again, speak to influencing policy and law in certain directions. Okay? So, again, that also creates a situation. Okay, so again, I love the older generation. I do. But when it comes to, again, Congress, they seem so ego driven. And I just think that is the demise of people when they feel that, them getting on their soapbox and speaking about how they're helping the people isn't really helping the people. The actions speak louder than words. And again, I'll go through what I mean here in a few slides. Okay. All right. So Rules Committee. So when you're talking about a Rules Committee, this is the standing committee of the House that is the strongest. Okay. This is the most powerful because it basically sets the rules. Okay. Rules Committee is going to decide what's going to be debated, what's going to be amended, and what's even going to be considered, okay, by the House. Okay, so the Rules Committee is a very powerful committee. I'm going to show you a list of both committees in the House and the Senate here in a few slides. Okay. Reconciliation. So this is a special rule that can be applied to budget bills sent from the House to the Senate. All right, so this is when in reconciliation, they cannot be filibustered. Okay, so you're trying to reconcile, you're trying to find the differences, trying to find a way forward. So reconciliation bills, they can't use unlimited talking or unlimited debate if it's in reconciliation. Okay? So congressional perks, franking is just one of them. Okay, franking involves just using their signature as postage. When you start getting in the big congressional perks, you start looking at junkets. Okay, so as I told you, alluded to a little earlier. Okay, so when congressmen and women are running for office, okay, they get donors left and right. Okay, so as they get donations, they build a war chest. Okay, war chest, that's what they refer to it as. And junkets are a way for these companies, okay, that have given money to these congressmen and women to take a trip, okay, in the sense of utilizing their influence as congressmen or women and are able to meet private citizens, but on the public expense, so on the taxpayer dime. Okay, so junkets, it's an extravagant trip or celebration in one particularly enjoyed by a government official at public expense. Okay, so again, you can justify the spending of taxpayer funds sometimes, even if it's in exotic locations, based on what junkets can provide. Okay, if you can justify it, if you're getting training, you can, say you're meeting with Joe Q taxpayer, whatever it may be. And again, they're going to, have a situation where, again, junkets provide one of those congressional perks, right? On, again, our taxpayer dime. All right. So when it comes to reapportionment, okay, last year was a big year, okay, not just for COVID-19, but the census. Okay, the census was taking place last year, getting all of the figures. Okay, everybody that lives in this nation, delineated by state, delineated by county, delineated by city. Okay, so again, figures lead to reapportionment. Okay, so reapportionment is the allocation of seats in the House of Representatives to each state after a census. Okay, so the largest state, which is California by way of population, okay, we have the most House of Representatives. Okay, sometimes during censuses, we will gain a representative because our population will go higher, whereas other states may go lower. Okay, so again, reapportionment, that census allows us to distribute where populations have flocked to, where they've eventually led to, in the sense of where they're at. Okay, so again, what specifically that is, again, very important. Okay, very important for us because again, we are the largest state. Okay, California, we have our problems, but guess what? We are the most populated state, and I'd like to say, a good portion of the population would love to live here, okay, in the world. So again, when it comes to those types of things, we have the breakdown every census that shows what our population is. Okay, so it shows what California is, what Fresno, Tulare County, Kings County, Kern County, all of these breakdowns of populations, where are they? All right. So redistricting, okay, and gerrymandering. Okay, so I alluded to this earlier. So this is one of the root problems with politics. And I'm going to be straight out with you right now. This is one of those problems that make elections not competitive. Okay. Oftentimes, gerrymandering will draw district lines to the partisan advantage of the incumbent. Okay? So that means that every election, okay, that incumbent has a voter registration of at least 60 to 40% and having that majority in voter registration. Okay. So very, very safe for the incumbent. Okay. So that's why you have Jim Costa, that's been in office for a long time. Devin Nunes has been in office for a long time. Again, gerrymandering allows them to do that because the district lines, their district boundary lines, are partisan advantage to them. Okay, so again, very, very much safe for their overall competition in the next election. Okay, so again, something they don't have to worry about. All right, so gerrymandering, like I said, it is one of the root problems of politics. The other, I believe, being lobbyists. Lobbyists are specifically another root problem, where again, us as average Americans, we don't have a lobbyist that we can pay for to fight on our behalf, to meet with members of Congress. Okay, so lobbyists, again, coming from every walk of life, but more of the time they are politicians. They know how to get around the capital scene. Their networking skills are superb. So again, they're getting paid for their expertise, which they garnered through their time in Congress. Okay, so depending on their seat, they're able to energize a certain population or demographic within a certain industry. Okay? All right. So Baker versus Carr and Reynolds versus Sims, these are two cases that involve justifying gerrymandering. Okay. So in justification of the way in which gerrymandering takes place was by way of Baker versus Carr and Reynolds versus Sims. Okay. So both of these justify the use of gerrymandering. All right. So the power of committees. Okay. So committees, like I said, Rules Committee is the most powerful in the House of Representatives. They are specifically a microcosm. Okay. So of how the broader House may vote. Okay. So every committee is basically a smaller microcosm within a certain issue topic area. Okay, so for instance, you have the Ethics Committee, you have the Agriculture Committee, the Veterans Affairs Committee, the Ways and Means Committee, all these committees that exist within a certain topic area. Okay? So discharge petition, this is just a procedure by which in the House of Representatives, it's being discharged out of committee from a committee that has refused to report on it. Okay, so discharging is basically forcing yourself out of committee to be voted on in the floor of the House. Standing committees and select committees are different in the fact that standing committees are permanent. Okay, they're going to be there forever, whereas select committees are only there for a short amount of time. Okay, so for instance, a select committee, you can say the 9/11 Commission, okay, in the sense of the oversight involved in the committee itself, or the Warren Commission. Okay, the Warren Commission investigated JFK. So again, once those took place, you didn't need those committees to exist anymore. Joint committees, these are comprised of both chambers of Congress. So you have members from the House and the Senate that make up a joint committee. All right. So in the red there, kind of exactly what I said. Again, standing are the more permanent ones. Joint committees are both, and select committees are temporary. Okay? Temporary in that way. Okay? Conference committees, they are specifically called to rewrite a bill so that it matches what the House and the Senate want. Okay, so a conference committee is looking to put language together that fits what both Democrats and Republicans want as it pertains to a certain piece of legislation. All right, so these are the committees themselves, what they are, what they speak for. So the ones on the left are in the House of Representatives. Okay, the ones on the right are in the Senate. Okay, so those are all standing committees in Congress. Okay, so as you can see, agriculture, appropriations, armed services, budget, education and the workforce, energy and commerce, ethics, financial services, foreign affairs, House administration, judiciary, natural resources, oversight and government reform, rules, science, space and technology, small business, transportation and infrastructure, veterans affairs, and ways and means. Okay, and that's just in the House. Okay, so again, there's a little overlap in the Senate, but again, you see those areas in the topics in which are important, and they will be important for the rest of our country's existence. Okay, so that's why they're standing committees. They're permanent. They will always be funded executive budget year in and year out. Okay? So what do I mean by executive budget? I'll go over what executive budget is here in a second. But again, Conference committee is, again, you are looking to reconcile differences in bills passed by the two chambers. So what does a committee entail? Okay, so I'm going to show you guys a short little video of a testimony in Congress. Okay, so what is this specifically? So this individual is talking about student loan debt. Okay, so how student loans have gone up in the past 20 to 30 years. Okay, so I think he's, for these congressmen and women that he's picking on, it's somewhere around 40 years. Okay, so this is Hassan Minhaj a year and a half ago testifying before Congress. I do have the closed caption on, so enjoy. Testify, and I would like to thank my name is Hassan. I'm a Muslim, and I condemn radical Islamic terrorism. It has nothing to do with anything. Chairman of Congress invited me here today because I just which means I may owe some of you guys. Yeah. So student loan crisis can really get called. Because for Americans, not more than 1.6.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
this is the
I just got the notion that there's a lot of lag. So I will post the testimony along with another testimony from Stephen Colbert. It was, I believe, 11 years ago. So I will post those to announcements under all the videos that I would have showed you for this chapter, chapter 10, and chapter 11. Okay, so I'll post those so that on your own time you can check that out. Hassan Minhaj, he makes the congressman look bad. It's pretty funny in the sense of how it's portrayed, and he's standing up for all of you. Okay, all of you are going to school, incurring debt. Hopefully not, but again, when it comes to buying books or when it comes to simply having the resources to go to school, okay, it's very expensive. I mean, you guys know. So again, when you talk about specifically what he's referring to, student loans, there's a lot of companies. He's going to refer to one of them, Navient, that puts a lot of fear in students to pay back interest on their loans that they shouldn't have to pay back. Okay, so again, when it comes to that, watch his testimony. It'll be one of those things where he specifically addresses those issues that you as a young adult would find important. Okay, especially like I said, speaking in the Education and the Workforce Committee to again examine what is wrong with the issue, what's wrong with the industry of student loan debt. Okay? All right. So how is Congress organized? Okay. So like anything else, the idea of seniority rules. Okay. Seniority system. If you've been around the block the longest, okay, you will get the better positions when they become available. So seniority system as it is defined, again, it's where the longest term of continuous service will be given preference when a committee chairperson or holder of some other significant post is selected. Okay, so the longer you've been with your brand of Democrat or Republican as an elected official, they will give you better positions when they become available. Okay. All right. So, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi at the time, specifically, what is she? She's the presiding officer in the House of Representatives. The Speaker is chosen by the majority party and is the most powerful and influential member of the House. So very powerful in terms of what is spoken about, the agenda, whether how tight or not tight the party is. So at the time, it is Nancy Pelosi. So again, when it comes to who has the most congressmen, specifically in the House, that decides who is the Speaker of the House. So right now, Democrats have more Democrats in the House, so that's why they get to choose who the Speaker would be. All right, so there's my meme at the bottom. I feel that, again, Congress members should earn what we have, okay, what we own. We have. I mean, at $35,000, I'm sure many of you would love to have the ability to earn $35,000. But again, as the economy is changing, all that is available sometimes is, minimum wage and part-time minimum wage at that. So again, when you're talking about the hollowing out of the middle class, I really feel that Congress should live more like us. If they really want to represent our interests, they have to be in our predicaments. And so I would suggest they make $35,000 a year, no pension, no benefits, just like an average American. Okay, so just like an average American, let's see how fast things change and get better in there. Okay, because if they're living under the same predicament that we are, they're going to look for a solution a hell of a lot quicker, being in the seat of power that they are. Okay, so there's a lot to be said about that, in the sense that, again, they should be able to have that connection between who they represent and the interests that they say that they represent. Okay, so actions always speak louder than words. All right, so Majority Leader of the House elected by the members of the House to foster party cohesion. Okay, so again, cohesion on both sides of the spectrum. Okay, so let's say in the House right now, okay, the House of Representatives, you have fringe members or not fringe members, but members that bring the party more extreme. Okay, so you have the AOC. Okay, so she would be considered more socialist in the sense of how or what she feels. So again, she'd be more progressively extreme to the left. But again, you have that same notion on the right. Okay, where Marjorie Greene. Okay, so she would be considered a fringe on the conservative side. Okay, some of the statements that she's made, some of the comments that she's alluded to. So again, both sides have to build cohesion as a party. What do they want to be identified as? Okay, so so in the sense of how people get labeled. Okay, so AOC has been labeled a socialist, whereas Marjorie Greene Taylor has been labeled a conspiracy theorist. Okay, so again, you have these notions as to how people get pigeonholed by way of how they feel or believe in certain ideas. Okay. So whip, this is a person that's going to be aiding the majority and minority leader to see where, again, you don't want members to go rogue. Okay, you want to predict what the votes will be. You don't want any surprises. Okay, so the whip is going to make sure and aid that and say, hey, you're going to vote party line on this, right? You're going to vote party line on this, right? So all these things come into play. Okay, especially right now, let's say for the $15 minimum wage. Okay, Joe Manchin from West Virginia is very, very much against that idea. Okay, so again, he's not along with that, along with Kristen Sinema from Arizona. So all these individuals that are now part of the moderate spectrum. Okay, so they're Democrat by name, but in the sense of where they believe the minimum wage is, they have some reservations. So again, oftentimes where you vote is indicative, again, of where you lie on that political spectrum. President Pro Temp, this is the senator who presides over the Senate in the absence of the vice president. All right. So Senate Majority Leader, we got Mitch McConnell. I'm sorry. It's Chuck Schumer right now. The Minority Leader would be considered Mitch McConnell. But again, they have 50-50. So again, it's not that there's a Senate Majority and Minority Leader. It's just the fact that, again, the vice president can break ties. Okay? So they have to share that reign of power. Okay? There is no majority leader per se, but the Democrats can break a tie with the vice president. And so again, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell have shared those reigns within the Senate, specifically the leadership. Executive budget. So this is specifically prepared and submitted by President to Congress. Okay, so the president is basically preparing what he wants the budget to look like, what he wants to fund, what he wants to defund, all these different elements of what the executive budget do. Okay, so that involves everything from funding of state, local, national agencies, executive organizations, the whole 9 yards. Okay, so when we're talking about what the executive budget is, it is trillions. Okay, it's in the trillions. Okay, in the sense of what it is funding. All right. So this is the leadership flow chart in Congress. So again, this is where leadership is, where again, you'd have, based on seniority, the individuals who have served the longest. Continuous service would be given those high positions of leadership. All right. So lawmaking and budgeting. So in terms of what the fiscal year looks like. Okay. So the fiscal year, when Congress gets together and passes what the executive budget is, it's a 12-month cycle. So it doesn't coincide with the calendar year because it runs from October 1st through September 30th. Okay. But the fiscal year is meant for bookkeeping and accounting purposes. Okay, so bookkeeping as to what agencies, state, local, national, are getting funding, what the funding looks like, all that breakdown as to, again, what we as taxpayers are looking to fund for that fiscal year, okay, by way of the president and what their priorities are, and then Congress saying yes or no to that executive budget. Yeah. Spring review. So this is the OMB is very important. So the Office of Management and Budget, okay, OMB, very, very powerful in the sense of they are getting all of these funding requests from all these agencies, state, local, and otherwise throughout the nation. Okay? Because again, when you're talking about funding, you have to go through a review process. Okay? If you're not utilizing taxpayer funding properly, you're getting on the chopping block. Okay. So again, you have to justify your existence. Okay. What are you doing specifically for the tax-paying citizen that deserves a budget? Okay. Whether year in and year out or having to come in every year and have to get approval. So spring review, again, this is reviewing programs, activities, goals, and submitting their requests for funding for the next fiscal year. Right? So basically, for these agencies and organizations, are they fulfilling their mission and vision statements? Okay, so a lot of agencies should have or do have mission and vision statements. Okay, are their fulfillments being met to the tax-paying citizen and again, what the obligation is to them. Okay. Fall review, this is going to be after receiving formal federal agency requests, is then going to review them, okay, see if they're actually legitimate, review the request, make changes, okay, so possibly making it lower that they're going to get, and submitting its recommendations to the president. So again, tinkering with what the request is and submitting its recommendation to the president himself. So lawmaking and budgeting, authorization, this is specifically authorizing, declaring that a certain amount of funding is available. Okay, so authorization is saying you're authorized this much funding. That doesn't mean you're going to be appropriated that much funding, however. Okay, so authorization, again, is just letting you know a certain amount of funding may be available, okay, to an agency. But again, fiscal climates change really fast. Okay, so again, authorization is only just that first portion of actually receiving that funding. Okay? So some authorization terminates in a year. Others are renewable automatically without further congressional action. And that's very political. What's going to get the check mark for the next 20 to 30 to 40 years, whereas some agencies and organizations have to go in every single year for approval. So case in point, let's say what got an extended approval. Jon Stewart, a few years ago, spoke on behalf of the 9/11 Widows Fund. Okay, so basically setting up in line where family members of first responders that died on 9/11 would be guaranteed this funding based on congressional appropriation. Okay? However, that funding was set to expire like 3 years ago until Jon Stewart brought attention to it and said, "Hey, you better not let this just die. Okay, we need to keep funding this project with regards to first responders on the day of 9/11," and it was able to be successful. Okay, so again, authorizing it now for I think the next 70 years, 60 or 70 years, something like that. So again, where authorization exists, it's very political. Okay, what's going to have to go in every single year, whereas where is going to have funding for the next 10, 20, 30, or 40 years. So appropriation, the passage by Congress of a spending bill specifying the amount of authorized funds that will actually be available. Okay, so again, authorization, appropriation, a little different in the nuance of what's available and what's actually authorized. Okay? So right there, you got, we don't always procrastinate, but when we do, the government shuts down. So it's happened before. I'm begging to say it's going to happen again in the next 4 years. I'm sure of it. So, you kind of see the political theater for what it is, and just grab a box of popcorn and just enjoy yourself. Don't take it too personal, because then it affects your mental well-being. So, in the sense of, again, the coronavirus relief bill, 1.9 trillion. I don't know that it's going to, specifically pass with everything it's asking for, but it's got a lot of momentum in the sense of what it's asking for. People are looking for those $1,400 payments. And again, the idea of the new economy. How are different industries and business going to open up after the dust settles, per se? All right. So our ad issue today. Okay. Oh, so Matt asked a question. So is there a reason it starts in October rather than January with the calendar? In the sense, there isn't a specific reason, Matt, but in the sense that, again, why the fiscal year tends to do that, the fact that it is right before November, and November is when elections take place. So if you have it to where, again, September 30th, October 1st, you have that little bit of a lag there right before elections, where, again, most of those congressmen and women are, bracing themselves because they have to run an election. So I'm not saying that's the exact reason, but it would make sense in the sense of the timing of why they would want, the fiscal year federally to run that way. In the state of California, it's a little different. It's actually July through June 30th. So July 1st through June 30th. So again, different fiscal year than the state and the federal government as well. Okay? So indifferent in that way. I'm not sure specifically as to why they did that either. But it is interesting. That is a really good question. I'd want to know that, the exact reason instead of, bullshitting you one saying, oh, well, they should do it right before an election, but again, that would be something to look at. I'll look at it. All right. So our ad issue today. Okay. So should the states and the federal government allow ex-convicts to vote in state and general elections once they are released from prison? Okay, this was a huge topic of discussion in the last election. So 2020, November, some states allowed ex-felons to vote. Like I said, California allows people that have done their time, they give them their civic right to vote back. So they re-enfranchise them. Okay. Whereas other states, like let's say Florida or Texas, have said, once you commit a felony, you cannot vote anymore. Okay. You lose that civic right to vote once you commit a felony. Okay, so in this dichotomy, okay, so I ask, okay, because again, different states, different ideas, so different strokes for different folks. Okay, so when I ask, you can come from the California perspective, you can come from the national government perspective, all of these different ideas that bring about why we feel the way we feel about the subject. Okay, and if you don't have an opinion, you should, because again, it involves, a critical element to our democracy, which is voting. Okay. It's very critical to say, who, can vote when and where, and under what circumstance. Okay. And the states get to decide that, because you'll remember, okay, federalism writing assignment, Article 1, Section 8. It did not give the power of elections to the national government. Okay, the 10th Amendment will say, hey, that was left to the people or the states to decide for themselves. Right? So again, that's where you see that dilemma based on, again, different elections for, who can vote in different states because of the rules that have been set in their state. So kind of dovetailing off in the second question, which is this to be left up to the determination of the state governments? So again, the determination, should it become from a federal perspective? Should the federal government use the elastic or necessary and proper clause and rein that in, or should they leave it up to the states to decide? Okay, so again, that's what that second question is trying to ask in that way. Okay. And the third, okay, should there be a different response based on the type of crime committed by the newly freed? Okay, so what do I mean by that? Okay, should there be a difference between somebody who commits, let's say, armed robbery, as opposed to somebody who sold some cocaine? Should there be a difference between somebody who, again, commits a armed robbery felony as opposed to somebody who is simply, selling a substance which some would call a victimless crime? So again, that's what number 3, that question is trying to ask. Should there be a difference between violent or nonviolent crimes as to, again, giving them or restoring their right to vote back? All right. So specifically, again, like I said, there is no right or wrong answer. And now there are 3 questions that you can grapple with. And again, like I've said, California allows ex-felons to vote, where Florida does not. They say no. Texas also says no. A couple of the other southern states say no. Okay? Once you've committed a felony, they have determined that you are no longer entitled to your civic right to vote. Okay? So again, very important to contemplate this question, and I'm still waiting to dive into your chapter 5 and chapter 12, which I'm going to be grading this week for quick rights. So I'll be getting those back to you this week. So again, look out for that. But again, mostly everyone's doing well in the course, in the sense of turning in their assignments, becoming more fluid with what is expected in a quick write, what's more pointed in terms of information or sources you may be using. So you guys are definitely doing well in the sense of where you're at, how you are. Jack makes a good point. Let's see. Mr. Espinoza, voter suppression over black people. We can include examples like that. 100%, my man. I was kind of alluding to that. But again, sometimes when, crime doesn't have a specific color. Black, brown, white, yellow, all commit crimes. Okay. So again, I didn't want to say just African Americans, but again, it does make sense why oftentimes the strong hand of the law is dealt harder on African Americans than any other race. Because again, when it comes to, let's say, mitigating a felony to a misdemeanor, okay, a lot of that do that for people of color, okay, but they will do that for people that are Caucasian sometimes. So again, those dual standards to the law that where Mr. Espinoza brings that up, again, incarceration is a big reason behind what people may refer to as the new era of Jim Crow, mass incarceration. And if you watch the documentary 13th that I put on as one of the videos, there's a lot of good information on there that again speaks to how the new slavery, specifically the loophole in the Constitution that allows, if it's for a purpose of a crime committed, that one can lose their freedom. Okay, and again, the heavy hand of the law oftentimes comes down harder on those that are people of color. So Isabella says, also whether they are considered mentally fit to vote, why they committed the crime might still linger in their mind. Yeah, I mean, in the sense of, again, I don't know if I would, in the sense of, again, because it's kind of a loaded word to say mentally fit to vote, because in the sense of anybody should be able to vote, regardless of their mental capacity. If their IQ's a 65 or off the charts, 160 or 180. I think everyone should vote personally. But again, in the sense of, again, where mentally fit, regardless of one's neurological strength, I think the common thread of democracy is allowing people that are affluent and people that, may not be as academically driven, and where both of them mean the same thing, because their vote, one is not any stronger than the other. So the equalizer on the system is the fact that whether you're rich or you're poor, your vote still means the same thing. Okay? It's not any stronger. It's not any weaker. So again, yeah, I mean, in the sense of what that means, let's say it was a violent crime like rape. That what you say, Isabella, would definitely, in the sense of, again, where one would kind of speak to in that way. So again, that may be an idea, again, committed in the crime. Why would an individual, if they were trying, let's say sexual battery or whatever it may be, where the mentally fit can kind of, come into play, where one is understood as an actual, thinking, breathing human being with emotions beyond, their own gratifications. Okay. No, I meant more towards their actions. Oh, so towards their actions, yeah, no, that would make sense. Like I said, depending on the severity of the crime. Like I said, should there be a difference between somebody who commits a violent crime and gets released, and then somebody who committed a non-violent crime? So something like, let's say, they were writing hot checks, they were selling drugs. So other things like that, where it's not using a gun, it's not, a violent rape, all these things that, again, violent and non-violent crimes. Should there be a circumstance that divides the two when it comes to being restored one's civic right to vote? Did that make sense? Okay. Just making sure. So specifically, are there any other questions, comments, or concerns or issues that anyone may be having with regards to understanding the quick right? No? Really? Crazy. So again, I'm pretty bummed out that I wasn't able to show you Hassan Minhaj and Stephen Colbert. But again, I will be posting the videos that I would have showed you if we were actually in the physical classroom. And again, if I've said it once, I've said it a damn 1,000 times. I wish we were in the physical classroom. Okay, so again, I will be posting all of that when class ends. I'll be posting the links for Hassan Minhaj and when it comes to Stephen Colbert, and then the 3 chapters, what I would be showing in accordance with what the chapters are saying. I feel you, Sandra. I do. I can't wait to get back to the classroom in which that I am accustomed to. Behind a screen, it just feels like, sometimes I'm just like talking to a box, and I'm going nuts, and I've been doing it for about a year now, and it's just like, what, you just kind of go crazy sometimes, because it's like a permanent quarantine, and you don't know if you're physically quarantined or your brain is quarantined, because you're just thinking bonkers. Any other questions, comments, or concerns or issues before I let everyone go? All right, sounds good. Have a great rest of the week. I will see everyone next week, Tuesday. Have a great one. Stay safe. All right. Peace.